Okay, so I guess we are on time. So let me kick this off. And so just a minute. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the latest gathering of Sitecore User Group Jaipur. And we are excited to start another insightful session together. So today we are honored to have Mohamed Cherif with us, who is currently working as Senior Director Generative AI at Sitecore and won the Sitecore MVP award 5 times. Along with this, he is also an active community member. As per his great knowledge, we are sure that we will learn a lot in today's session. So I would like to hand over the session to Mohamed, and you may begin the presentation.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I want you to feel free first to ask any questions at any time. Just either raise your hand or ask the questions on Teams chat, whatever you prefer. And today's session, what I'm going to be talking about is what I call generative UI. So we've all heard of generative AI, right? And let me share my screen for a second so I can actually talk through this. 1 second, trying to figure that out. Okay. As I was saying, we've all heard about GPT, Chat GPT, large language model, generative AI, all these different terms that we've heard that have become a really important part of our day to day, right? Whether it's in work, in life, whether it's how we see it impacting the future of our work as well, right? So one of the things that is really important is how is this affecting us? But before we go into this and how it's affecting the experience in general, so Psychor being a marketer first digital experience, we look at this in multi-factors. But I want to focus on one factor today, which is that digital experience plus generative UI. And I want to start off by saying why has this become such a big topic today? Like AI actually started in the 1970s. That's when the term was defined or created. But why is it that over the past 2 years we've seen everyone talk about it? Like if you look in the news, you'll find people talking about AI. Scarlett Johansson was just talking about AI. Movie stars are talking about AI. Everyone is talking about AI. And the reason, in my opinion, is one, that it became democratized. What I mean by that is everyone got their hands on ChatGPT. ChatGPT is now free for anyone to try. So people started seeing so much more of what AI can do. That's one. Two, the time it takes to train a large to train AI in general. First, I want to say classical AI was quite long. Like you had to prepare your data set, you had to teach that or train them all based on that data set, and then you had to continuously reiterate. And it took long time. Like it took at least 6 months to be able to do that. But with the advent of large language models, you're training that model, that large language model first. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of processing power to train that large language model. But once it's trained, you can fine tune it much, much easier and much, much quicker, with much, much less data. And that's where it became a huge value for especially a lot of the markets or a lot of the businesses that did not have the ability to use classical AI, whether because the market was changing very, very frequently, very, very fast, or because it was just too costly to have your own data science and machine learning team. And that's where we see the priority. So McKinsey sees the potential of generative AI being about $4.4 trillion in annual global productivity. And we'll see that the impact is in sales, marketing, software engineering, customer operation, and product and R&D, which is really, really important for us in our space. And I'm sure for a lot of the people in the session today. So before I jump into what is generative UI, because again, uh, I I want to kind of differentiate between generative AI, which is the ability to use large language models to generate text, right? To be able to generate text, to be able to generate images, to really be able to generate content really, really well. But what generative UI is, and I kind of took this from Nielsen Norman Group, um, the way they define it is in the future, generative UI will dynamically create customized user interfaces in real time. This shift will force an outcome-oriented design approach, where designers prioritize user goals and define constraints for AI to operate within, rather than design discrete interface elements. Now, that's a big statement. What does it mean? Ultimately, generative UI is about how AI is going to impact web experiences or experiences in general. So if we think about experiences today, web experiences, they're very structured, right? Like you go into a website, let's actually do that with a live demo. Like if I were to go to psycho.com, right? That's a good example of a cool site I like. Or even Google, or even Amazon, any website really. Let me just open a website. So I'm going to open bing.com, or let me open Apple Store. So I see the website here, Apple's website, and it's a really cool website. I can see like all the different things that Apple is selling, whether like you want to get Mac, iPhone, iPad, and so on, and then the latest, and then all these different pieces. And its structure is one size fits all, right? Like it's the way it's laid out is everyone will see the same page, the same experience. If I'm more interested in, let's say, iPhone, I can go in and start going through that. But then maybe I want to buy an iPhone and I want an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Then I go through a set of steps. So I go into buy, and then from buy, I have to choose which model I want, the Pro Max, and then which color, and then which size, and so on and so forth. But then I realized, okay, that's too expensive for me. So I need to go back. So let's go back here and say, I want to go to, let's say, maybe the 14 instead, because it's a little bit cheaper. And I want to say buy. And then I have to do the same steps again. So I need to go iPhone 14 and then choose the color and then choose the size and then check. It's just a very complex process because I had to repeat the same steps multiple times. And it would have been much easier if it understood or remembered what I had originally structured in the iPhone 15 or what my preferences were, and told me when I said back or I said I'm not interested, it would have understood that I'm not interested or I abandoned this experience or this buying journey because I wanted to actually do something else. As soon as I clicked on, let's say, iPhone 14, it should have understood that. It should have been able to retrofit or ultimately update the experience for me to cater for all that historical experience that I have. That's one piece of it. The second piece is we're not all the same, right? Like some people might like this experience where it's showing so many cards. Others might not. Others might want to be more focused on what they're browsing. So how does the experience itself change? And that's what's really cool about generative UI is the ability to, rather than have one interface for everyone, it can be a personalized interface for each user. So each user can see a completely different experience. One can see these cards, like we were talking about. Another person can see maybe a comparison because the way we've seen their interaction is that they want to be able to see the iPhone 14 and iPhone 13 side by side. Another person might just want to be able to see high level, the most important one, that the recommended option for them, and then others below it. And then another person might want to just see a listing of all the different options. And that's where generative UI comes into play is that you no longer, as a designer, as a website designer, or as a website developer, you're no longer thinking about the website as a page or as a site, and then the site has sub pages, and then these pages have components and how these components are laid out. I'll go back to that definition again. Um, it's what we call outcome oriented design, where ultimately we're focusing on the user goals, we're focusing on the different components that are there to achieve the goal. So I might have uh, an iPhone product card. That's a component. But how do I use that component? Where does it show? How does it show? Is not in my control anymore. I don't control it as a designer anymore. It becomes these discrete interface elements that AI can choose when and how to show. Now, to do that, it's much, much more complex than what I'm saying, because ultimately, when we think about it, it's not just about the component. It's not about these discrete interface elements. It's these discrete interface elements with the business behind them, with the intent to use them, with the content that should be associated with them, all grouped into Lego pieces that I can give AI, and AI can choose from, pick and choose from, to be able to structure within guidance, within groundedness. So let me just stop here for a second just to make sure that if there are any questions.
No question in the chat window right now. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand or mention that in the chat window.
So I'm gonna go into some demos of what that means. So this is a demo Sarah from our sales engineering team did, just to showcase the art of the possible with Sitecore and Personalize, and like Sitecore, XM Cloud, and Personalize. So I'm browsing this website. I'm looking for snorkeling, as I can see here. I opened a page or a website blog post about snorkeling for singles. Then I opened things about Asia. So it's starting to understand what I'm looking for, what my intent is. And then it starts realizing that there isn't an article that's there to serve me. So AI can start generating an article on my behalf. Now, this article is not generated, again, as I was saying, it's not generated by AI kind of going to OpenAI or ChatGPT and saying, write an article about snorkeling for singles in Asia. It's actually based on my atomic content, my pieces of content that already exist in my content management system, and being able to generate that from it. So one, that's the first piece of it, which is kind of how we're able to get content and generate articles or generate components or generate experiences on the fly from it. But I haven't changed the layout, right? Like the layout is still the same. The layout did not change. It's just that I was able to get content and have AI generate that content for me or put it together in the same brand tone of voice. Let's go to another example here. And this is another demo that we created just to showcase the art of the possible. And here is like a commerce site, my fictitious Psychor shop. And you'll see here what I have is I was able to switch, like I can switch the images as well. So I can have like try on. Here I have my personalization recommendations, and then I have try on, which is kind of like gives me the ability to choose different body types and have AI change all the images for me. So now, oops, that's why I like to do live demos. So now I can choose the body type that most resembles me. And then I can ask even questions like, what are the fashion trends of 2024? And have AI understand that and find the most relevant results from a search perspective using Discover. So you'll see here, we have all these different products or recommendations. One is a little bit Christmassy, one is like a shirt, and the like these sweaters and this vest. But let's say I want to follow up. That's not what I'm looking for. There's 3,000 results. There's no way I'm gonna go browse between like across 3,000 results. So why not be able to follow up? So I can filter from the left side here, or I can just say I'm going out for dinner. Which should I choose? And AI will understand what that means and convert it into the right filters. So it understands that I'm looking for like clothing that is more for an out for a dinner setting. So it was able to recommend that for me. And then maybe I can still go to like a chatbot and ask what accessories go well with this. And again, AI would be able to answer such questions. So it's, again, I haven't gone into layout changes at all yet, but just to show the experience of how you can apply that ability of AI driven intent for your website, your web experience, to understand the intent of the user and based on it, get the right content for you. So either by finding the right content through search or creating the right content from your atomic content pieces. This is another demo now talking about experiences. So here is from a chatbot experience. So again, this is just a demo experience. So I say here, get me the latest 5 news articles, and it gets me articles. So this is where, again, we go back to that experience of discrete components, discrete design elements. So as a designer, I no longer control how my elements are going to show. We know that they're going to show as a response to a chat, but I have no control over that response. It's coming from like AI decided the best way to represent the articles is to show this news article widget in a listing format, for example. I can ask, I want an Italian restaurant for dinner, and it's going to be able to do the same thing where it's going to be able to show me different restaurants, different dining options here. And from these dining options, I can choose. And you see the experience is different. Like here, it's a card with like the title and a subtitle here, and it's in a carousel view. And I can even ask completely different questions like where are Sitecore office locations? And it's still going to understand that and convert that into Google Maps. So it chose the right widget for each of these and chose the experience that most fitting for that. And that's really what I mean by generative UI. It's that personalized experience. And you can think of all the impact that means. One impact is how will my SEO work? How will my page analytics work? How will Google Analytics work? All these different questions, right? Because we need to think about that when we think about these experiences. That's one piece of it. The other piece of it that's really important is how do we really think about design then? Like it's no longer, as I was saying, it's no longer about actually designing an experience. It's designing these discrete elements. So how do we ensure that these discrete elements work well within the experience? Again, I'm going to stop here for a second just to make sure that no one has any questions.
There is one in chat window.
Okay. But the content is from Google search AI generated, then what is Sitecore input? That's a great question. So the content itself is not like Google is not going to create the content. What Google does is it's going to rely on the content you create. So a lot of the times we're working with customers when we think about like Content Hub on how do you manage your atomic content? How do you manage that the content that you're portraying yourself is the most accurate version of that content when it comes to headless content, when headless content management, even with Sitecore CMS. How do you have the ability? We've always had the ability for you to create content and then link it up through data sources to your experiences. So being able to do that, that's one. The second piece is that the experience itself with the ability to have components and be able to then for Google, for instance, to use these components to represent it in their search generative experience or Copilot to be able to answer that and so on. So it's you don't necessarily own the overall page experience, but you still own these distinct widgets that you've created. And that's where, again, going back to analytics becomes really important that you need to think about analytics not just from a page perspective, but from a user journey and user goal perspective. So think of it as you might not have the full end-to-end knowledge of what the user has done, because you no longer see the whole journey. You only see the piece where your widgets were used. But then within that, you want to be able to publish events for your analytics tool, like we do with CDP, for instance, so that you can collect that data. You can start profiling your customers through that as well. Okay, and then there are two other questions. For e-commerce site, are you using any multimodal model which understands text and images? Both? Yes. So Discover is based on a large language model, Scikor Discover, Scikor Search as well. So it already uses it, vectorizes based on that knowledge. But even when you're doing like LLM based, then you would need to use either multi-vectors, so you'd use an image vector and a text vector separately, or you'd use a multimodal vectorization. So for example, like Microsoft Vision AI 4.0, or previously known as Project Florence, where it's able to vectorize both the text and image combined. I see another question. Is it required to train GPT model with all custom data so that it could understand the overall context and questions? Training it, you can't train large language models. You can fine tune them. Either you build a new large language model, or you fine tune a large language model, or you contextually ingest context to the prompt. These are the three levels. So let's take each one level separately. Train a large language model. Train a large language model is what OpenAI, uh, uh, Google, all these companies are doing. They're training a large language model like Gemini, like or GPT, and so on. But that's not something most people can do, because it's just very, very expensive. And it's very expensive to operate as well. You can train small language models, and a lot of people are looking into that. For example, like Microsoft Phi, as a small language model where you can fine tune it or train it on your own data or your own information. That's one option. The second option is fine tuning, where you start fine tuning them all by giving it examples. So the way I always like to represent this is, think that you have a full library and you have a 5-year-old, and you want to guide this 5-year-old within the library. Fine tuning is exactly that. Fine tuning is, you tell this 5-year-old, look, don't go to the adult section, go to the children's section. So you fine tuned it to what it can see from the world. The library is its world, and the library has everything, but what they can see now is only the children's area of the library. That's what fine tuning is. Then, if I instead ask them a question, so let's say, for example, ask them, um, who's the president of the United States? They would, maybe they don't know the answer. And for them to be able to answer that question, and I've guided them, as I was saying with fine tuning, I can guide them to which part of the library they can find that information. Or I can give them, let's say, 2, 3 books, and tell them, look, you're going to find the answer in these books. Can you search in these only? And that's what I mean by context based. So this is things like retrieval augmented generation or RAG pattern, where you're ultimately, before you tell AI to answer a question, you're giving it a context, you're giving it a set of data points to use that. So the examples I've shown, is it based on RAG pattern? It's not based on RAG pattern. It's based on something called chaining, which is, I want to say, the evolution of RAG pattern. RAG pattern is very reliant on, you're doing retrieval and then you're generating. With chains, you're creating multi-step RAGs. So think of it as, first I understand the intent. So for example, here in this chatbot, first thing is, I need, when the user asks, where are Psychor offices in the US, the first thing is, I'm passing this to a large language model to understand the intent. And then once it understands the intent, I then do retrieval augmented generation. There are others that are a little bit more complex when we go into chain, for example, things around like the follow-up I was just showing in the e-commerce scenario, where it's not just about that. It's also about breaking down the statement into what should be facets, what should be filters, and what should be actual semantic search. Does this answer the question? Perfect. Now, I want to actually show a couple of demos on how to do this. And I want to start actually with a demo that Vercel has done, like a live demo that Vercel has done. So this is a demo, again, just showing that search generative experience or generative UI as well, where I want, like, it's a flight booking experience, and this is using Gemini. So I can say this flight's flying from San Francisco to Rome today, and you'll see here it created this experience for me. This is ultimately what United Airlines, let's say in this example, is creating as its distinct experience or distinct component. Then I click on this. Now, once I click on this, this is where you, as a business owner, let's say United Airlines in this scenario, you want to be able to know these events. You want to be able to know which event was triggered and be able to track that information. And then it still generated a new experience from me as United Airlines, which is my seat choice thing. So I click on the seat I want here from the availability. I can choose to proceed to checkout or list hotels and make a reservation. I'll do that. And again, based on what I've chosen, the journey itself is changing, the experience is changing. If I had done proceed to checkout, I wouldn't have seen this experience at all. So we can choose which hotel, for instance. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. So I can see all the different hotels here, and what I can do is choose one and then pay for it. Okay, so let's say I paid here and I did my OTP to pay for this. And you'll see again, I have a choice here with it show flight status or show boarding pass for a flight. So let's say I want to show the boarding pass. I can do that. But I can also go back and say, well, actually, I want to see the flight status. And it can start showing me the flight status as well. So you'll see here, that's what I mean by the experience can change based on what the user asks. And all these are ultimately, or most of these widgets would have been created by something like United Airlines, or maybe the whole chatbot is created by United Airlines. But it just shows what it means by having all these different distinct experiences and then have AI manage these distinct experiences for you. Okay. Any questions around this? So why don't we go into a little bit of code before I show other experiences around this. I don't know if everyone here is technical or not, so I don't want to delve too deep into technicalities, but just to show the concept here, and Vercel have created something called Vercel AI SDK, which is a really cool kind of wrapper. The way they define it is like an ORM for AI. So you can get started by doing npm install AI, and then you can use the Vercel AI SDK, which is subdivided into different pieces like AI core, React Server components, and UI. So you can create these different experiences like the ones I showed. All the demos I did were using the AI SDK. And even this one Versal did using AI SDK. But the important piece of it is how you go about doing that. So I'm going to kind of show this in code. Um, so it's not just about a single page. It's about also that you no longer control what is on that single page, right? Like you don't have control over saying that this single page has one, two, and then three. It's this single page literally can have anything in any order based on the user's intent. Does this answer the question? So let me kind of open this up for a second. Uh,
There is one more replying to the same question.
oh, okay. So we won't need multi-pages. That's a very hard question. I don't know the future quite honestly. Like I don't know how this will shape up. This is still very early. So will we need multi-pages? When mobile apps first came out, people were saying we'll never need web apps, right? But it turned out to be web apps are still alive and well and probably are still more successful than mobile apps. So I don't want to rush into saying what we will need and what we won't. I think we just need to consider that experiences are going to fundamentally change. We may still need multiple pages because an experience is not just one box, right? Like we may have things like login or sign up, for instance, that may never change, or they might. We may still need to have pages because we want to create different landing pages and we don't want like some of the things are proactive, not reactive, right? Like some of it is about campaigns that I want to push out and I want to send people over email telling them to check out my new campaign or my new article, or even I want within the chatbot, when the chatbot answers, to tell me here's a snippet, but if you want to read more, go to this page and then be able to view that page. So it's, in my opinion, it's gonna always be a combination of the two, where this can really be, the way I think of it can be more of how the homepage changes, but then the rest of your site doesn't change that much. Like how many people have personalized the blog post? You may want to, but in reality, the cost for versus value of that. How will generative UI going to affect or change SEO and accessibility? SEO is fundamentally changing already. Like the whole concept of SEO is fundamentally changing. We're already seeing that with search generative experience on Google, for example. So if I were to go to Google again here, so let's go to Google here and search for something like, where are the best locations to get coffee? Okay, you'll see it got me sources from the web and then it got me this. Let me say, what are the best ways to invest money? I don't know. I'm just asking anything. You'll see here, I was actually looking for the generative experience. For some reason, it's not showing for me right now. But the ability of asking questions and getting like the search generative experience here as an answer first, or the Copilot Gemini experience first, is ultimately changing how SEO works. Because if you want to be part of this, even if you want to be part of the Microsoft Copilot experience, and I actually have an example of this. So if I go to copilot.microsoft.com and kind of search through something like, for example, one second. If I want to go in and ask a question, so let's say, for example, I go in and say, what are the best EV cars in the market? Oops, cars in the market. Okay, so that's a question I've asked here. You'll see that the way it's relying on, it's no longer looking, even if it says like Hyundai and BMW and Polestar and Tesla and so on and so forth. You look at where it's getting that data from. It's from Car and Driver, Edmunds, Car Talk, and Edmunds again, right? It's no longer from my website. And then you'll see that it's, the way it's choosing them is a little bit more intelligent. So you'll see here, it's saying like vehicles for sale, that's an ad. And then it's seeing here, oh, these are things in Avon, Connecticut, where I live. then I can say show more and it starts showing these other experiences, or I can say show details. So it starts doing these comparisons between them. And in order to be able to do that, SEO is no longer, or search SEO for chatbot experiences are no longer about the same SEO metadata that we used to focus on. Now it's looking at, do you have the right information so I can create something like comparative tables like this? So it might have not, and it actually did not get any data from Volkswagen or GMC in this example, because all these are GMC cars. It got this from other companies because they had more data. So I think SEO is going to be much, much more reliant on data and being able to put your content in a structured data where AI can understand it better than it is going to be about your meta tags and all these things. They're still important, but it's also going to look at other pieces to measure your SEO. Accessibility is something I'm very personally excited about with generative experiences, because experiences, when they're personal, they can be also very accommodating. So instead of what is happening today, where a lot of times we say, oh, we want to be compliant to accessibility rules. And I'll give a really good example of this: gov.uk. Gov.uk really focuses a lot on accessibility. And you'll see the site is very driven by that, but the site maybe is not the experience a lot of people are used to, right? It's very static in nature. It's not visually very attractive, I want to say. It's easy to use. It's simple. It's accessible for everyone, but it's not the most visually aesthetic pleasing site. And some might argue and say, no, they love how it looks. This is my personal opinion. But if you compare this to, let's say, apple.com, you'll see Apple has a lot of imagery, has a lot of, like, the whole experience is very visual driven experience. Now, with accessibility with generative UI is you can actually change the whole experience based on people's preferences. So the person who likes sites that are very visually driven experiences can see something like that, and the people who like more or have constraints and want to see sites like this, they also have that choice. Does that answer the question? Okay, so I want to jump into some other capabilities, and something that's really interesting that actually just came out in the React conference last week, is, that's not it, is this demo. So Evan Bacon in the React conference wanted to show off Expo Router for people who have not had the chance to see the React conference last week. Expo Router is a way to create native apps that are based on React, not React Native, or based on the same concepts and methodologies of pure React. And again, he was talking about generative UI and generative UI experiences. So here you'll see that demo starts off with list new movies, and it shows these movies, and it shows this carousel of movies. But as I clicked on one of them here, or he clicked on one of them, you'll see this is a native iPhone capability, is the ability to do a long press, it shows up and it shows the menu for it. That's a very native iPhone experience. It still worked within that generative UI experience. And then it showed the cast. And then as he asks another question here, show me movies starring Owen Teague, and it was able to do that. It changed it to a query actor. It queries actors async, and it chose Owen Teague because AI was able to convert this statement into really an async query and execute that async query. And then it showed these results. And then it showed also like some recommendations, like create an event or see show times. he chose create an event, and you'll see what it did was it integrated with well, first it created like the calendar thing, and when he clicked on schedule, what you'll see is it opened the calendar app within his iPhone. So this is also one of the really cool things about generative experiences is that it can be as simple as your iPhone becoming really what you're interacting with rather than interacting with 1,000 apps. And who knows what iPhone's going to announce in their announcements, but maybe rather than interacting with these 1,000 apps or having to install these 1,000 apps, why not just be able to just chat with your phone on exactly what you want? And here he started saying, "What's Charlie's phone number?" And it went to his phone and got all the different Charlies he has in his phone, and he could choose one of them, and he could even message them directly from here. So he just said, send a message to him, and he could write the message directly from this experience, and then, "Hey Charlie, how are you doing?" And it would send Charlie this message. And then here he's asking a different question like, "Show me things to do in Las Vegas." And here you have Apple Maps, a 3D map inside of this experience here, where he's able to interact with that map directly from within. So and again, get the weather. So it got the weather, and it's kind of he's able to switch. And then book an Uber. This is also really cool, where he was able to integrate with another app here, which is the Uber app. So get an Uber, created kind of like a widget, like the iPhone widgets you have on like on your home screen or the side screen. Sorry, where it got the Uber widget, and then he could see exactly how much it's going to cost and everything from here. Then when he clicks on request Uber, it opens the Uber app so that he can choose the Uber X and pay there. So this is really cool because in this demo, he was able to show how he integrated so many different scenarios, so many different experiences. Maybe these experiences are owned, as we've seen, by different companies. One was Uber, one was Apple things, and one was his own movie theater demo that he did, all in one single experience. So that combination of all these different experiences into one and being able to really drive through an experience. Now, it doesn't have to go that far because, again, if I'm building for a specific customer, that customer might not want to do all that. This is just too much. They're focused on their business. They might want to cater for SEO, they might want to cater for accessibility, but it's still a very powerful capability because a lot of experiences, think of like travel, for instance. Booking a travel or booking with an airline is just a pain. Yes, now they've most of them have simplified it. So if I go to like most of them copied experiences from other companies. So let's just say I go to United Airlines as an example, and I book United so many times, but I can honestly bet you I've never seen what's below this box. Like all this, I've never actually read before. I don't think a lot of people have, right? And United realized that. United realized that their market is actually just this banner at the top. Nothing else is important. And people are not even looking at the banner, they're just looking at this part. And that's why they decided, for example, that a carousel showing the different destinations and this 50,000 bonus mile is to sell, to upsell to you. You're not going to scroll down on this page. They already know that. They already know you're not going to go into all these other pieces. All you're going to look for is this when you go to United Airlines, or you're going to go to the like my trips and all the other pieces. So in order to try to advertise for you, they're trying to do that through this carousel to show you everything in this small piece. And that's where the innovation will become, right? Like, okay, now let's say United realize that this is the widget they own in any experience. So when you're using Copilot or when you're using ChatGPT or when you're using Google Search Generative Experience and you ask about booking, United wants you to see this box, right? But they also want to upsell to you. That's where they're going to be innovative in, and you guys are going to be innovative with your customers on how do we best create experiences for our customers so that they can still upsell, they can still create their ads, like learn more about the 50,000 bonus miles or join us in donating miles or money to help Brazil. But it's still going to be focused on that experience that that discrete experience that each one owns. Any questions?
No question in the chat window, I guess.
Okay. So with that, I just want to kind of also have like do some recommendations. I did say I'm going to go through code, so I will go through code. And the second piece I want to kind of say is like next steps. So let me go through code very, very quickly and then talk a little bit more about next steps for anyone who's interested to learn about this. So as I was saying, this is the demo that Versal created for that booking, travel booking. And you'll see that it has two main things. I'm not going to go into every single thing it has, but it has in library here, it has something called chat, and then it has actions. And you'll see here actions is where all the brain thing happens. So you have here describe image, submit user message, request code, validate code, and so on and so forth. Let me just go in to one important piece of it, which is submit user message. This is the very first step when someone types something in the chatbot. They do rate limiting and then they create an AI state. So think of this as a server state that remembers all your previous messages and you're able to get from it like the state in a non-stateful machine. And then they're getting all the chat history and then they're kind of preparing some pieces here, text stream, spinner stream, message stream, UI stream. And then they start creating a text stream here, list destination cities. So here is the different tools. So think of tools as the intents I was talking about. So you have here the different experiences that you support. So here they support list destinations, show flights, show seat picker, show hotel, checkout booking, show booking pass, and show flight status. These are the different things, and they're kind of using that same model of intent, LLM based intent. So LLM is defining which intent. So they created this system prompt that helps do that. And then when the user asks a question like I did about like show flights, this is the tool, the description for the tool, so AI knows when to choose it, and then it has here the object. So what the result should look like. So it's saying AI should generate something that has a departing city, an arrival city, a departing airport, arrival airport, and so on and so forth. Now let's look at a different one, like for example, show seat picker. Again, it has a Z object for how a seat picker should look like, or show hotels. Again, it has description, which is just a Z object. That's the parameters for it, and so on. Now, that's the first piece, which is that experimental stream text. So first piece is getting what the text that their streaming is. And then they just tell the spinner stop spinning. So done. So that stream is done. And then they start using here is like there's streaming information. So the text is streaming. So that's why it's a delta. So for await constant delta from the full stream, go get that delta and start updating the message stream. So they have here a message stream that has the bot message. So this is the text that the bot is answering with. Now, if it's not text, like if the actual stream is a tool call, so it's an answer that needs a visual experience, check what tool it is. So if the tool name is list destination, or else if it's show flights, or else if it's choose seat picker. And what you'll see here, what it's doing is defining that the AI state is done with the message information. Then it's updating the UI stream to be the bot card with whichever experience. So here it's the select seats, or the one below it is, let's say, show hotels is the list hotels experience, and so on. So think of it as what it's doing here is it's define it's first identifying the intent, so what the user wants to do, and based on that, it's able to stream that intent as a message and as a visual experience for the answer when it needs to. The second piece of this that I want to show, and I am conscious of the time, so I'll be very quick about it, is how the chat itself happens. So here, if we go into chat and the chat list here, which is the ultimate chat answers, all it has is the spinner, the display, and the attachments. And that's what's really cool. Like everything is server rendered and then being pushed to the client. So the client doesn't even know what display is. Display is being defined by the server. So the server is deciding what the visual experience that it should show is and pushing it to the client in this very seamless streaming experience. Now, next steps. Two things I would recommend anyone to read about is the Vercel AI SDK. They have great documentation around it. The second one is around Nielsen Norman. They have two articles I mentioned. One is the 6 types of conversations with generative AI, which talks about how do you think about all the different experiences around generative AI. And then the second one is generative UI that I kind of used the first the first definition from and the screenshot from, which talks about what generative AI and even examples of like browsing a flight, they use this, but also what does it mean from a designer's perspective? What would an outcome-oriented designer do, or how should they focus on micro interactions to cater for that? So it's a really interesting read. I would definitely recommend it to everyone. And with that, I'll just wait for a second here and ask if there are any questions. So I And as you might have guessed, of course, Sycor is very excited about AI. So a little bit of a plug here around Sycor. We're very excited about generative AI and the potential it can help. Uh, we're creating our marketer first AI experience. If anyone wants to learn more about what Sycor in specific is doing around that, I would recommend check out our generative AI page within psychor.com. You can see like a video about our vision on our products with generative AI and how we're bringing AI and generative AI into our products, as well as information around where we're going with this. With that, I want to thank you all for your time today, and if anyone has any questions.
Okay, I guess we don't have any question. And so thanks, Mohammed, for such a great session. And it was very helpful for us. And generative AI is a great topic and very useful feature nowadays. So I would like to thank you everyone to join this session. And we hope if you have any question related to this topic, then you can communicate with Mohammed and on Slack or any other social media network, and also reach out to us as well. Also, we will publish this recorded video soon, so you can refer this in future as well and share with it with your team members. So if you have any question, so we can wait for 1 or 2 minutes. Otherwise, we can wrap it up. There's one question from Shilpi. So we are kind of limiting what kind of range of questions user can ask for a particular page by our code.
Yeah, so that's yes. I would say yes is the answer to this. So one of the things a lot of people realize is if you let it if you keep it completely open, people will still ask the same questions, but you have no control over the experience. So that does not necessarily mean that you should limit it only and then answer I don't know with the rest, but you limit which experiences are most important to you as you define your customer journeys and your outcomes that you want to achieve from your experiences. You already know which experiences are most important to you, so you can kind of lead customers towards these, and then the rest can be fallback and might be just textual only, for instance.
Any more question, anyone? I guess we are done with all the questions, Mohammed. Thank you so
Thank,
much again, and
it's
thanks
my
everyone
pleasure.
for
Thank you, everyone.
joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.